everyone, and welcome back to the show. It is so wonderful to have you here listening in to Inspired Coach today. And wow, do we have a beautiful episode ahead for you. It is one of our beautiful You success stories, this time with the incredible Annie Gichuru. Annie is a racial equity coach and consultant for online entrepreneurs, and we are also absolutely delighted to have Annie not just as an alumni of the Beautiful You Coaching Academy, but also as one of our incredible trainers. Annie is someone who is deeply passionate about representation in the coaching industry through a racial justice lens, and she combines her experience as a life coach with her love of storytelling and her extensive career before she came into coaching as a human resource specialist. Annie really has a very gentle grace and spirit and a passion for us all to live in a more racially equitable world. And she is an incredibly compassionate educator and somebody that is just doing such beautiful, incredible, impactful work in the DEI space. And today you're going to get to listen in to Annie's story from being hesitant about even training to become a coach in the first place and whether it really was for her, through to how once she made that decision to study, going all in and really committing to her coach learning in the Beautiful You Life Coaching course, to niche changes that she's undergone, to now be running an incredibly thriving, vibrant, six-figure plus business. Wow. What a journey, and such an inspiring thing for you to be able to listen into. And so we absolutely hope that you love this episode ahead. We are sure that you will. And a little reminder, everyone, there is not long to go now before our July 2023 course begins. That has completely sold out. But if you do want to pop yourself on the wait list, because there might be spot come up, you never know, sometimes it does happen, please do make sure you go to beautifullyoulifecoachingcourse.com, where you can sign up to the wait list right there. Enjoy this incredibly inspiring success story ahead with the wonderful Annie Gichuru. Annie Gichuru, hello and welcome to Inspired Coach Podcast. I am overjoyed to have you as our guest today.
Thank you so much for having me, Julie. It's an honor to be here.
Annie, there is so much for us to talk about in your success journey and your life and business journey as not only a Beautiful You coach, but also our absolutely incredible diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI coach trainer. And I want to cast your memory back, if you can, to go back to the period of time in your life where the idea first came to you about becoming a coach. What was life like for Annie at that stage?
Life back then, I was working in corporate. I had come back from maternity leave. I had a side hustle, my business, which was huge. It was a documentary series called True Life Stories. And I was trying to see, how can I monetize this? How can I make this into a fully running business? Because everything to do with, documentaries is very cyclical. And I wanted to make that the main gig. And I remember having dinner with a dear friend who introduced me to the idea of coaching. It was never anything I had thought of, but she packaged it in a way that made it sound like it was incredible. And I had actually worked with a Beautiful You coach to help me launch my documentary series. So I was familiar with what a coach was and what a coach did, and loved how she was running her business and how she was supporting me, a mom herself. And then here is a dear friend telling me about how I could potentially be a coach and how I could go about that because her herself was a coach as well. And so that's when the idea and the seed was planted.
Okay, so it's one thing for a seed and an idea to be planted. It's a whole other thing altogether for that seed to then grow. And so you've had the idea come to you. What did you have to sort of think through and decide for yourself to make the next step, which was, I imagine, to make the decision to train?
Mm. So I was going to Kenya on holidays. So we had met around November, end of 2018. And so I thought, look, I'll go away on holidays and let this marinate, and then probably join the February cohort. I'll give it some thought, and then went on holidays, thought about it, but kept saying to myself, no, I don't think I could. I don't think this is the stories, just to be quite honest, Julie, they felt like they were too good to be true. You know, the way you read testimonials and you're like, but that's their story. That's not mine. The way you hear people won opportunities and you're like, yeah, but that never happens to somebody like me. And so it felt exciting, yet it felt like it wasn't a reality. Like that wouldn't be my story. But
Mm.
it just kept niggling and it stayed there. And I thought, you know what? At some point, I think it was February, March, I was like, I'll put in, I'll go for it. But I also wanted to, when I did make that decision to go all in, that I wasn't just going in to test the waters, that I was going to go all in and give it the best shot. And whatever happened, if I was successful or not, that was it. I wanted to give it my best shot. And I also think it was very much driven by being a mom. I was a mom for the second time now. So at home now on mat leave with baby number two. And the thought of going back to corporate, the thought of climbing the corporate ladder for me wasn't glittering. It wasn't wooing me anymore. I wanted to do something for me. I wanted to build a business for me and my family. I wanted to have a legacy that I would be proud of and do things on my own terms. And so this felt like that might be the way to get there.
Mm. Yeah, and you know what? As you were saying that, Annie, about going all in, I was having memories come flooding back to me all those years ago of being your trainer in the Beautiful You life coaching course and having the privilege of witnessing you going through that experience and your learning and your growth and seeing the absolute follow through that was that commitment. You did go all in. Can you tell us a little bit more? Because this was something that was completely new to you. You had never studied anything like coaching before. What was the experience like for you?
The experience was one of look, I didn't come with any expectations of what to expect because I obviously hadn't done any sort of coaching training. But I was really surprised, and I shouldn't be, but what the course said it was is what was delivered. The trainers were who they said they were. When I submitted work to be reviewed and did my homework, somebody came back to me and saw me, understood me. It wasn't just like, oh, great, yeah, you got that, move on to the next module. It was very timely. It was not timely. It was very, I see you. I see what you're trying to articulate. And what you're saying matters. It is of value. I didn't go into this thinking I would be validated. I didn't go into this thinking that this would be a personal development process. I thought I was just coming in to learn how to coach, how to get coaching skills. But what I got in return was almost like a new discovery of myself
Mm.
and steering me into a direction I never ever thought I would take with my life and my career.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Annie. And I know that there are many people who actively have a very similar experience to what you are describing just now, that they think, okay, I'm going to learn the skills to become a coach, and don't realize the depth of the personal journey that is ahead of them and how profound that is, not just throughout the course, but in fact, well beyond it. And I also happen to know, having been privileged to witness your journey over all of these years, that your niche and area of focus and work is something that has expanded and shifted and changed since you first studied, first graduated, and over the years that you have been now coaching. And so, can you tell us a little bit about that journey and how you started out and where things are now?
Yes, so I started off supporting migrant women of color to unshackle their self limiting beliefs so they can really propel themselves, particularly in the corporate arena, because that was my experience. I worked in human resources. I was really good at what I did, but I saw that there were migrant women who were relegated to roles where they never quite rose up the ranks. And a lot of it had to do with their mindset because of what they had believed they were and told they were and what they saw in the workplace. And so I felt I was in a position to bring in my expertise as a HR specialist and somebody who was a coach to help them unshackle those mindset blocks. In the process of doing that, I saw a gap in the industry in that there wasn't much representation of people of color in the coaching industry. There were a lot of people coaching in terms of if I wanted to find a coach, I could, but not specifically a coach who was a person of color. That would have been really, really difficult. In fact, when I started out, I wanted to work with somebody who was a person of color, but really didn't know anyone or saw anyone who I resonated with. And so that was because I wanted somebody who would understand my journey. Ours as people of color is a journey that is unique. It's one that has challenges and barriers and setbacks that only we ourselves who identify in this way can fully and truly understand and help us steer that journey, particularly if you've been somebody who has gone through that journey and overcome some of those things. You're better placed to support. And so I saw that gap. I saw it for what it was, not seeing that representation in terms of coaches and seeing clients who didn't even know that that was a gap or an area or that they needed support in. And then enter the racial awakening and reckoning of 2020 following the public execution of George Floyd. And that is when I really saw the gap and the lack of knowledge in terms of building businesses that are racially equitable. And that's when I made that slight shift, going back to my HR expertise in terms of my diversity and inclusion practices and applying them now from a coaching perspective to online business owners who were looking to build businesses that were racially equitable. Made that shift, and because of the demand at the time and because of the gap, it's something that helped my business pretty much explode. And it's something that I have been, doing since late 2020 to date. And it's what has really propelled and helped build my business to what it is today.
Thank you for sharing that journey with us, Annie. And I also know that now you are, particularly with the incredible success of your business and the skills that you've developed and the hundreds of clients that you've now worked with one-on-one and in group programs. You are now also specifically helping Black, Brown, Indigenous, and women of color entrepreneurs build their businesses too. And so you have become one of those coaches that you were once upon a time looking for and not finding someone that you were resonant with.
Absolutely. Wow. I love how you framed that, Julie. Yes, I have become that person I
Yeah.
kind of hoped and wanted to find and get that support from. And this is something that has just really, really brought me so much joy to be able to support others in the early stages of their business. They're building their businesses and they're wondering, how do I do this? Um, how can I be visible? Because that's an area, as you know, women of color, we really struggle with the visibility aspect, especially when you're not seeing others who look like you, who are either doing the same thing, saying the same thing, and you wonder about your relevance. You wonder who will want to work with you. In fact, research has shown us that a lot of times when it comes to people with marginalized identities, they often don't want to share their photos because when prospective clients see their images, they go like, I may not want to work with that person because they are possibly less experienced because of the implicit biases that we hold. And so we tend to go to what we see all the time, what is represented and what is shown to be better or the best. And so this is an area where I am working closely with my clients, helping them to, again, going back to unshackling those mind sets and those self-limiting beliefs to allow them to show up in a way where they are unapologetic about their identity, unapologetic about occupying space and being an expert, being a thought leader in the area where they are so vast, so well placed, to step into. I'll give you an example, Julie, particularly when it comes to the yoga industry, somebody who is of Indian heritage and is constantly second guessing herself because she sees so many white women who are now teaching yoga and she feels second best to them when this is her heritage. This is what she grew up doing. This is part of who she is in her identity and her bloodline. Yet she feels less than. So you can understand, given everything in terms of what is presented to us and what we consume, has such a strong bearing to what we end up becoming. And so this is part of the work I do in terms of unshackling those self-limiting beliefs and helping them see who they are and stand truly in their rightful place and occupy that space that is needed of them.
Oh, Annie, I feel like you just gave us a sermon, a very, very good sermon that you sit up in the pew and want to take note of. And so thank you very much for that. And, this makes me want to ask you because it is an experience that I know that you had when you were studying with us in regards to the fact that the work that you do for some people can be, specifically white people, can be, I'm not necessarily sure whether triggering is the right word to say, but it can be very igniting. And it can bring up a lot of defensiveness, a lot of mistruths. It can really ignite someone's bias and their inherent racism can spew forth. And I remember when you were studying with us that on a call one day, you raised that you had just started to talk about what you were doing as a coach and the clients that you were going to be working with and that they were going to be migrant women of color. Tell us what happened with that story, because I think that I know this is casting your memory back, but I do want everyone to know that, journeys to success, they can involve a lot of challenge and a lot of difficulties and a lot of misunderstanding. And I think that that is, of course, I know, in fact, we know that that is even more prominent for Black women such as yourself trying to find and make your way forward in this industry?
Yes. We were down to niching. We were down to the module to do with niching. And you know how meaty niching is, Julie. It's trying to figure out, where do I fit in? What expertise do I have? Who is the person I can serve? And given my lived experience, given the areas that I had specialized in and where I felt I could best serve, was migrant women of color, because that is who I am. And there are so many things I've had to overcome. And I felt that's where I can lend my support. That's where I can be of most service to. And I remember sharing this with a couple of white women, and the response wasn't what I was anticipating. It was met with questioning. It was met with even now looking back, possibly ridicule of, ooh, women of color. What are women of color? And isn't white a color? And I remember her pointing to her hand and going like, isn't white a color? What is this? Aren't I a woman of color too? Why wouldn't you be of service to me? Sort of questioning, and really now having done so much extensive work in the realm of racial equity, understanding the entitlement that questioning came from, the entitlement of, ooh, you're creating something that now doesn't include somebody like me who has historically been included in almost everything. And so it was, and somebody who felt that entitlement, being a friend, being somebody that I was being of service to at the time. And now looking back, reflecting on that, and it really shook me, because I'm new to this work. I'm still a trainee coach, and wondering, well, should I now be of service to not just women of color, but just women who want to unshackle their self-limiting beliefs? And now what I know to be true in my core is that if you're not niching and being so specific who you serve, then you're really not serving anyone. You're not standing out, and you're not being of service in the way that you are intended to be, because you cannot serve everyone. And so I think that is what you were gently trying to tell me, you and the other trainers, which has now been something that I have come to learn through experience.
I also think that a part of this, Annie, too, when I think back at this time and have memories around you raising that as well, is that it is also your right, as it is every coach's right, no matter how they identify, to work with whomever you want and to not work with whomever you don't want to. You know, this is something that we love to be able to try and tell people, oh, you shouldn't do that, or that's not right, or what about me? Failing to understand that we are probably making decisions in our day-to-day life that exclude us or others from certain things as well in a perfectly appropriate way. And I will never forget that training call when you raised that, because all of your fellow life coaching peers and trainees learned from that as well when you and I had that conversation, the crux of which was, you get to do what you want. They can respond in that way, but you don't have to make it mean anything if you don't want to. You have chosen this amazing area, working with women who really need you. The fact that it is not for them is them to deal with. It's not for you to deal with. It's like, so it's not for you. Move on. You know, there, as you said, there are lots and lots of other things that are.
And you know what, Julie? I think this is such a great opportunity to share the fact that if you haven't done the work of racial inclusion and any other kind of DEI work, you will not be able to support certain kinds of students. Because you, Julie, if you had not done this work, if you're not somebody who is constantly invested in this lifelong work. You'd have gone like, yeah, Annie, why don't we make your niche a little bit more broader, and maybe just, you could just be a mindset coach to help people, women of this age, particular age, to unshackle their self-limiting beliefs. And I believe there are many, many coaches and trainers out there who are doing this work of coaching without having that lens of inclusion. And what a cost that is coming to so many marginalized identity. What a cost that is coming to this work of coaching when we are again being made to look at things from the dominant narrative. So I think you just speaking now with all the work that I've done and where I am at currently, just seeing the value and the incredible necessity of doing inclusion work, because how else would you be able to support a trainee like me who's coming into a call like that saying that this is the conversation I had over the weekend? What should I do? And you had the power to steer me in any kind of direction because of the vulnerability and the trust that I had in you as my coach and my trainer and mentor at the time.
Well, I think the key word that you say there, Annie, is necessity, because you are 100% right about that. As a privileged white woman in a position of power, a teacher and trainer, and somebody that is working to bring forth future life coaches who are holding the hopes and dreams and lives of other people in their hands, there are many, many elements to that that are incredibly important, that as a teacher and trainer that I get right, or as right as I possibly can about that. And one of those things, just one, but a very, very important one of those things, is deeply looking at, as much as I can, through, because I can't live it. I'm a white woman, I can't live it, and therefore I must develop relationships with, educate myself, work with, pay to explore my own biases, the marginalized and lived experience of people other than myself. Knowing that there are, of course, many, many millions of people, millions and millions of people, billions, it could be, around the world who are Black, brown, Indigenous, and people of color who both want to work with coaches and both want to become one themselves. And so it's an absolute necessity. And as you know, it's something that we at the Academy take very seriously. And we are now in the incredibly privileged position to have you to help us with that, because you are doing such incredible work with other, especially, I believe, white coaches in the industry, helping to train them and educate them in this realm. And you are also now one of our trainers at the Academy. And you were just the right person for us to explore that opportunity with. And we are incredibly grateful to you for everything that you now bring our trainees in this realm. It is extraordinary because you are extraordinary.
Oh, Julie, thank you so much. And I feel like this is such a full circle moment for me, because I remember, giving feedback at the end of my experience, and, giving all the feedback that I could. And I said, if there's one thing that I would say that I would have loved to see is, potentially having a trainer that looked and sounded like me, or had gone through a journey that I felt would be one that they would understand, especially when it came down to the niching. I had a lot of support from all the trainers and the cohort. I was being cheered on. But at the back of my mind, I kept thinking, if there was a Black woman here, if there was another person who had a story that they was one that related to mine, I would feel so much more seen and given the permission, because there's so much permission seeking when you're, trying to enter into an area that you haven't. And I remember giving that feedback, but never once did I imagine that I would be the one many years later coming back into that position. And so it's such a full circle moment. And just to kind of highlight, the academy and how different things are done, coming in and thinking, well, that's not going to be my story. This is everyone's sharing really nice things, but I don't know if that will be true for me. And I got seen in a way that I didn't think I would be seen. And then giving feedback that I didn't think I would be an answer to. And that again, taking place. So there's so many moments that have happened that have really stopped me and caused me to reflect about the authenticity of the kind of academy that has been created here for life coaches, that has truly been, and not to say, I cannot overstate the fact that has been truly life changing.
Well, you are a part of that and changing lives too, Annie, and we are so grateful to you for that. Annie, I want to return for just one moment because I feel like I really want to hear your answer to this myself personally, is that you are now, these years later, after you trained with us, initially coming into this course thinking, I can see people sharing testimonials and sharing things about this experience, but I don't know whether that's necessarily going to be for me or whether that will be my story. And of course, everyone's story is individual. But these years later, I know that you are now running a highly successful 6+ figure, well patronized business, which I am beyond thrilled for you about. If there is anyone that deserves that level of success, it's you. Can you please share with us a little bit about just your thoughts and feelings about where you're at now in comparison to where you've come from? Is there a part of you that still feels within yourself, gosh, I can't believe this? Or are you now at a point where you're like, I worked really hard for this. I'm 100% earning of this and I'm here?
The latter, absolute the latter. What it has taken to get here, Julie, as I said when I signed up, I was going all in and I wasn't coming out the other end unless I got what I had put in. It's taken a lot of hard work. I don't know who them coaches are who say like they make 6 figures in 6 months. Good for them, bless them. But this has been a 3.5 year work in progress. This is not something that happened in my first year. And I also think that, it was very much driven by the demand that we saw in 2020, where that awareness, happened. I think my success story would have been a lot more slower hadn't we not had that kind of awakening. But it's been a lot of hard work. As I said, when I started studying, I had a little baby. I was on mat leave, and I was working hours of 7 p.m. when my husband was home and we'd had dinner and kids were in bed to midnight. That was the window that I had to coach. And don't forget that I was waking up in the middle of the night to breastfeed and do all those things when you've got a little baby. And so it was hard work. And it's still hard work. It's just a different, how they say different devils at different levels, and so I've learned so much along the way. But kid you not, especially being a woman of color, it is not an easy journey. A lot of people will see you, underestimate you, not pay much attention to you. And so there's already the difficultness in starting a business and growing a business, as it is for any single person. And then now add the identities that you hold and how that may, cause you to be marginalized. So it has been a hard journey. But the thing is, it is the tenacity, the idea, the ability to just keep going, even though I can't see the end, but to show up every single day and do what I can because I truly believe in my calling, And I often say being a racial equity coach is not something where like when you're growing up going like, oh, I want to talk about anti-racism and I want to educate white people how to treat us better. No, absolutely not. This is work that terrifies me. This is work that I have to do so much. And you know, Julie, you know on a personal level how much work I've had to do to step
Mm.
up, be visible, and to share my perspective in the way that I do. It's a lot of hard work. So getting here, I see it, I acknowledge it, and I think it is absolutely earned.
I am so pleased to hear you say that. I really am. And just that sharing, Annie, I know is going to be such an inspiration to so many Black, Brown, Indigenous, and people of color coaches and those who are thinking about taking this path for themselves. You are an incredible trailblazer. We are so blessed to have you not only as a part of our alumni, but a part of our team as well. Thank you also, may I say, for making this industry better. Thank you for making the coaching industry more just, more diverse, more equitable, more divine, more human. Thank you so very much for everything that you bring to this industry, way, way beyond just our academy and your clients. The impact that you are having is enormous. And I am so excited to know that it's just started, it's just begun.
Oh, Julie, you rendered me speechless. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome, everyone. If you ever contemplate the pathway of studying with us here at Beautiful You, then Annie will be someone that you will learn from. No matter how you identify as a human being, she will be one of your trainers, and that is something that will stay with you forever. If you have loved hearing from her in this episode, then you just wait. You just wait until you get a chance to be trained by her as a coach. Let me tell you something, you are in for an amazing treat. And I think that Annie's success story is one that is so heartfelt and incredible. It has certainly been a privilege for me as first of all, Annie's trainer, and then her work colleague, now her friend and sister, to walk side by side and watch the growth of Annie's business in the most incredible way, and for it to be so outrageously deserved in every possible moment and experience along the way. Annie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Julie.